Appreciate all of you who are here this evening. So great to be back at the end of another Lord's Day, to be thankful for our blessings and to be able to come together and worship the way that we are worshiping this evening. I want to talk tonight about setting boundaries in the technological age. We do live, I think there's no argument here, in a technological age. And I have a little perspective on this particular subject because I'm 44 years old, at least for a few more days anyway, and being that age, I use all the technology that's out there. I have a smartphone. I use a lot of internet tools and things to help me in my work and help me in my life and the way I do things. But I also remember a time when the internet did not exist. And I might as well just admit that. I'm old, okay? I'm older anyway. I remember before the internet. And a lot of this audience doesn't know what that was like. But back in those days, before computers were portable and before the internet, the technology would set the boundaries for us. For example, a lot of you remember dial-up internet. Okay, dial-up internet was not on all the time. You would decide, well, I want to check my email, and then you would make sure that you still have enough time left on the contract with your internet service provider. Yeah, we still got a few more minutes. I got enough time to check my email. And then you would have to ask the house, is anybody going to use the phone? I need to check my email. Now, that's a question you don't ask anymore, but the internet came through the phone lines. Most people just had one phone line, and so you had some competition there for that line. And then you'd check your email, and then you would get off either when you decided to get off or you ran out of time with your internet service provider, or somebody needed to use the telephone, or something bumped you off because keeping your connection all the time was difficult, at least in the early days. Nowadays, it doesn't come through phone lines. It doesn't come through lines at all. It's floating around in the air, and we're always on the internet. And so there's no boundaries set in terms of time. And we've also crossed the space boundary as well, because in the old days, computers weren't portable. They were stationed in some location in your house. They were too big and bulky and had to be plugged into the wall. And so you weren't tempted to carry your computer to the dinner table or in the car with you. Distracted driving wasn't as big a problem then. I'm not going to say it wasn't a problem at all, but you certainly didn't have a problem with texting while driving because people weren't carrying their computers around in their pockets all of the time. The boundaries were baked into the technology itself, but that's not the way it is any longer. Nowadays, your technology is not going to set the limits for you. And if you don't control it, it's going to control you. Another problem that occurred to me as I was thinking about this subject this week, talking about this to you tonight, was that we're getting to where our phones are doing our thinking for us. It's like our phones are starting to become our minds, which of course is not a good thing. I think we all can agree. Instead of trying to remember something, we just Google it and get the answers because they're all out there. At least that's the perception that we have. And when it comes to our imaginations and how we link up socially, it's very different now. We don't sit around and wonder, well, I wonder what so-and-so is doing, or I wonder what my friend over in the next state is doing, or in the next country is doing. We know what they're up to, a lot of us, because we have this ongoing, continuous mental telepathy through the internet with our friends through social media. We know what they're up to because we're staying in touch with them constantly, and there's no break from person to person. The stats show now that teenagers spend 9 hours a day consuming media online. Now that includes streaming television and listening to music. Social media is about 2 hours of that 9 hours. 9 hours a day. That's 5 years and 4 months of your life, enough time to go to the moon 32 times, enough time to walk the Wall of China, the Great Wall of China, 3.5 times. That's a lot of time that we're giving to internet usage. And the warning's there. If we don't control it, it will control us. And it looks like it's already got control of a lot of people in the world today. So we need to talk about setting limits in the technological age. And where I want to start with this is just talk about what unbridled technology does to our thinking. Let's ask this question. What does unbridled technology do to our thinking? And I think when you see what it does, just some of the things, you will be motivated to start setting some boundaries. Number one, it makes your thinking very negative. When you get online, maybe you've noticed it makes you feel worse. That's not an accident. Scientists have found that we feel more depressed after we look at Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and that's by design, because what you're looking at is not simply just a social outlet, it's a business model. The social media apps and platforms have figured out how to make money with this thing they have developed that's so popular. And a lot of people think, well, when I log on to Facebook or when I get on Twitter, I'm the customer. You're not the customer, you're a user. We need to understand this. There's a big difference between being a user of social media and being the customer of social media. The users are the millions of people logging onto their social media accounts and scrolling through their news feed and making posts and sending pictures and status reports. Those are the users, but the customers are businesses that pay these social media platforms for your information that you're giving up for free, to pinpoint advertising, and even to do social reconstruction. You're not a customer, you're a user, and people are farming out your information. And so here's how it works. A large firm hires Facebook or Twitter or somebody for this information, and they want to have good information. The businesses are interested in people using this stuff as much as possible, staying online as long as possible. So what these social media platforms do is they develop things that draw people in more. And we all know the answer to this next question. What are people more interested in? The positive headlines or the negative headlines? We all know, we have newspapers, or we used to. We know the headlines are negative, the local news is negative, and the news on social media is negative because that's what gets our attention. And so by design, the algorithms on these social media platforms are made to dispense more hatred and anger and upset negative emotions, because that gets people to click more, to stay online more, to comment more, and to reveal more about themselves so they can farm that information about you out to the companies that are their customers. And I'm saying this because I don't think you need to naively log on to your social media account, scroll through your news feed, and think you're just looking at some neutral, raw, unfiltered data that pops up based on who you chose to friend or follow in Twitter or Instagram. That's not how it works. It's being cultivated carefully to pull out negative emotions so that you'll stay on more, so that these companies will have more to offer the businesses, because you're not a customer, you're a user, and being a user, you are being used. You're the product. And the product is negativity. So it's by design. It makes you more negative. Now, here's another thing. If you can believe it, it makes you less imaginative. I know that's what people think the opposite. I get more ideas off the internet, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. You're not coming up with your own ideas. You're getting all your ideas off the internet these days. All of us do this, right? Can't remember the definition of a word? You Google it. Need to learn how to fix the dryer? Guys, what do? You go to YouTube, right? Want to learn how to play a song on the guitar? Get the app. Want to rearrange the furniture in your living room? Try Pinterest. Cooking dinner? Look at your favorite blog. Get a recipe online. Trying to sort out a complex political or religious discussion? Go to Facebook. That's not a recommendation. I'm just talking about what people do, right? Go to Facebook. Wanting to learn about what's going on in the world? Go to Instagram. That's what we do. That's how we find answers these days, and it's making us less and less creative, less and less imaginative. There's no longer any need, we think, for us to come up with solutions on our own. And we think that it's all out there on the internet, except it's not. It's not all out there on the internet. Social media bills itself as a place where we share information and expand our horizons. But it's just the opposite. I talk about these algorithms. They're a real thing. Not only are they designed to drive us towards the negative so that we'll click more and look more and stay online more, but another thing they do is they feed us more of what they think we want. So if they notice that we're looking at a particular subject a lot, they'll give us more of that. If we visit a particular friend's page more often, they'll give us more of that. And soon you're seeing more and more of the same thing, and you have this homogeneous news feed, and you might think, well, there's a particular friend I used to see on my news feed all the time. I don't see them anymore. That's by design. It's narrowing your thinking more and more and more, so that you become more and more dull, less imaginative, and less diverse. It makes you less imaginative. Here's another thing. Your thinking also becomes boring. M.T. Anderson wrote a book called Feed, and in the book, it's a future picture of the future world. In the book, people aren't using smartphones anymore. And you think, okay, great, we've gotten somewhere. No, wait, here's the rest of it. They don't need them because the internet is implanted into their heads. And so they just access the internet, which is the feed, constantly in their minds, always doing two things at once or more than that. And so the story is about this group of kids that have these implants and the problems that might come up having them, and they have some problems with them. But it's very interesting as Anderson pictures this world. He doesn't show us a world of people who are excited and enthusiastic and inspired at every turn because of these devices implanted in their heads. Instead, they're really bored. There's one scene where the kids go to the moon, because you can do that in the future. They just go to the moon, have a great weekend, and they're having fun bouncing around in the no-gravity zone. They're going to live concerts. They're eating these strange alien meals and doing all kinds of things that you would imagine people do on the moon in the future. But what are they thinking about it? The protagonist said everything seemed kind of sad and boring. Well, what about Mars? They go to Mars too in the book, and the main character in the book says about Mars, he says, Mars is dumb. Now, what is Anderson trying to get across here? He's saying in a future where everything is possible, nothing is exciting. Where nothing is forbidden and everything is permissible, there's nothing to get excited about. Everything's boring, everything's dull, and I'll get to in a few minutes why boundaries and limits actually make the world more interesting. But think about that. Your thinking becomes boring. And one last thing, it becomes unproductive. Now, the Bible stresses over and over again to make the most out of every opportunity. Isn't that what the Bible teaches us? Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good for all people, but especially those of the household of faith. So we've got to keep our eyes open to all the opportunities and make the most of every opportunity to do good, especially to our brothers and sisters in Christ. In James chapter 4, verse 17, James says, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. And so keep your eyes open. There may be a right thing to do in the moment you're in the place where you're in right now. You don't want to miss it, because that neglect equates with sin, according to James in James chapter 4, verse 17. And opportunities abound in the present. They're all around us, but a lot of us fail to see them because our noses are stuck in our phones. Or we're spending so much time online. We're so distracted by this false, unrealistic world, the cyber world, the virtual reality, that we're missing out on the opportunities in reality. How many relationships failed because instead of having real conversations, people just sat in the same place looking individually at their own phones? How many opportunities to serve have been missed because we're so wrapped up in ourselves and what we look like online that we don't see the needs of the people around us? How many chances to spread the good news have been missed because we're not available for people to ask us questions because we're so locked into our personal online worlds? We're becoming less and less productive, and this technology is supposed to help us be more productive. Isn't that ironic? One thing is sure, the longer Satan can keep us distracted, the happier he is. You've probably heard of C.S. Lewis's book, The Screwtape Letters. It's an imaginary conversation between demons. I think it's the head demon is named Screwtape, and a lower demon is named Wormwood. And they have this apprentice-mentor relationship where Screwtape mentors Wormwood. And Screwtape instructs Wormwood that you don't have to make man sinful. You don't have to get him to commit things that are wrong, per se. Just get him spending his life doing nothing. He calls it the nothing strategy. And the nothing strategy results in a man getting to the end of his life saying, I now see that I spent most of my life in doing neither what I ought nor what I liked. If you substitute the word life for the word day, you might see a reflection of how you feel after a 3-hour social media binge. I spent most of that time doing neither what I ought to have done or even what I liked to have done. Do you know that feeling? Do you know that guilt? That means you may have a problem. You may be dealing with an addiction here. It's the nothing strategy. And here's another quote from it where Screwtape the demon explains to his apprentice that the nothing strategy is, he says, very strong. Strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in a dreary flickering of the mind. Over it knows not what and knows not why, in the gratification of curiosities so feeble that the man is only half aware of them, in drumming of fingers and kicking of heels, in whistling tunes that he doesn't like, or in the long dim labyrinth of reveries that have not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature's too weak and fuddled to shake off. What makes the nothing strategy so effective is that it results in a person saying, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Everything I'm looking at is wholesome. I didn't fail to keep myself pure. I'm not looking for trouble. I'm watching my words. Okay, you're not doing anything wrong, but are you doing anything right? That's the question. And for a lot of us, technology has created a challenge of productivity. We're not as productive as we need to be. We're not praying as much as we should. We're not reading the Bible like we should. And so what's the answer to all these problems and what's happening to our thinking? Well, the answer is simply setting boundaries. I'm not up here to tell you to throw your phones away. I'm not up here to tell you not to have a social media account. I have all those things. But don't let it control you. You control the technology. You're the one in charge of your life. You're the one that decides what happens to you in eternity. You're the one who decides whom you will worship, not your technology. Boundaries are important. God has always asked us to respect boundaries. And here's one of those places in Proverbs 22, verse 28. Do not move the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. In other words, this is a metaphor about property lines. But it's not just about property lines. Sure, the wise man is saying respect the legal property lines and boundaries. But that kind of advice in the book of Proverbs, you should know to look for more than just respecting real estate. It goes far deeper than that, right? He's saying the people before you have taught you laws and customs and traditions and practices that are healthy and wise and yield a better, fuller, more abundant life. Pay attention to them. You're not smarter than they were. A lot of us think we're the first people to ever arrive on the planet. You know, and the younger you are, the smarter you think you are. The older you get, the less you realize that you know. Let me tell you, if you're young, you're not smarter than the people who are older than you. You may know how to use technology better, but when it gets down to practical wisdom, listen to the ancients. Listen to the aged. Listen to those who've been there, right, Ray? Because they've been through some stuff. And they tried it the wrong way and learned the hard way, and they're trying to save you some trouble. They can learn from you as well. Older people can learn from younger people. Younger people can learn from older people. But the point I'm trying to make is there are boundaries that need to be respected. Ancient boundaries. And we're going to have to set them because our technology is not going to set them for us. A boundary sets limits, right? A boundary says you can go up to this point and don't go any further than that. This is a healthy place to stop. You go beyond this, you're into some territory that's beyond the commandments of God or beyond the wisdom of life. You're going to get in trouble over there. You're going to get in trouble with those people. You're going to get in trouble doing those things. Stay on this side of the fence. That's what a boundary is. We're not talking about rocket science. We know what boundaries are and why they're important. And so, how do we set boundaries for our technology? I had some of the boys pass out this social media contract. Maybe you got a copy of it. If you didn't, I don't know where the guys left the leftovers, but if you know where they are, put them back on the Welcome Center so people can pick them up. I think Jimmy's saying there's some in the back on the Welcome Center. So there's some out there. You can get one if you didn't get one before the service started. But this is a pact. If you use social media, I want to challenge you to take some time to look at this and make a pact with yourself. That's an acronym. The P stands for priorities, the A stands for areas, the C is for conduct, and the T is for time limits. And so you can look through this. I'm not going to go through every line of it, but I am going to explain what this is. Set some priorities. What are your most important priorities? Please don't put Facebook on that. That should fall lower on the list. I think we know in here what comes first, and what comes next, and what's way down on that list. And your time limits are related to your priorities. So secondly, and your areas that you go in as well. So secondly, designate some areas. A lot of the boundaries that we don't think about have to do with where, not necessarily when or how long or how much. Have you thought about where you use social media? Let me give you an easy no. Don't use it while you're driving, okay? Don't do that. And I shouldn't have to say that, but we have laws now on the books because people have gotten into so many accidents with distracted driving. So many people have died because of this kind of thing. But also, it's particularly true of young people, but also for adults, your bedroom, when you should be sleeping. Don't use social media there, in that area. Make that a place where you sleep, where you rest, away from that, where you find a place away from that. Watch my conduct. Make some decisions about how you're going to act online. For some reason, we act differently online than we do offline. We think there's some anonymity there. The people we're talking to aren't real people. But a boundary is a decision that you make ahead of time. And it's very helpful because when you're in the heat of something, somebody challenges you or says something that alarms you online, you're not likely to think through it then and there. But if you made a decision ahead of time about how you'll act and how you'll conduct yourself, you're more likely to stay within the confines of how God wants you to live. And then set some time limits. Remember, teenagers are now spending 9 hours a day online. That's way too much. Think about the activities that fit within your priorities. Think about how long it takes to read through the Bible in a year. How much time should you spend in the Bible per day? I'll tell you, it takes 15, 20 minutes a day to get through the Bible. 15 or 20 minutes and we say, I don't have time to do that. And then we turn around and spend 2 hours on social media. And if you don't believe me, go to your iPhone and look up. It'll tell you how much time you spent on social media. It's probably 2-3 hours a day. And you don't have time to read the Bible? What activities should you be doing? How much time does it take you to do it? Make sure that you are doing those things. Set a bedtime, especially young people. Now, I think your parents should sit down with you and look at this if you're old enough to use social media, but I think you should think about this as well. What time are you going to bed? And then set a time when you're going to unplug. In other words, put your phone away. That's a while before that. This blue light that the phones are putting off that we're looking at, it's messing with our sleep patterns. We have a big problem with sleep deprivation among young people these days. It's a health hazard because of our technology. Can you believe that? And so take some time to look at this, honor it to the best of your ability. Just sit down for a while and think about how you're using this technology and do better. What changes whenever you set these boundaries? That's what I want to end with. Just 4 things. Number 1, we'll become more positive. I already talked about how this stuff will make you negative. Well, if you're off of it more, naturally, you'll become more positive. And it's good for you to be positive. This is science, okay? Medicine has come out with studies that have shown that optimistic, positive people are healthier than negative and critical people. Here's something from the Mayo Clinic. It says that the following health benefits come with positive thinking: an increased lifespan, lower rates of depression, lower levels of distress, greater resistance to the common cold, better psychological and physical well-being, better cardiovascular health and reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease, and better coping skills during hardships and times of stress. I want to be sensitive here. I know that some people have a medical problem that causes depression and anxiety. I know all about that. And I'm not talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about your attitude here. I'm talking about something that is within your control. And the Bible commands that we be positive, hopeful people, doesn't it? What does Philippians 4:4 say? Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I will say rejoice. And that's one of many commandments from God, that we be a joyful people. And so if we don't work on that, friends, if we don't work on that, we're not trying to be obedient to God. That's what it boils down to. And look, if you're not paying attention to how much time you're spending online, and you're not buying into the science is saying, this is making you negative, it's making you sad, it's making you depressed. If you're not paying attention to that and taking that seriously, are you trying to rejoice in the Lord always? Seems like we need to set some boundaries here to help us become more positive. Number 2, if we'll set these boundaries and use our technology in a healthy way, it will increase our imagination and creativity. We'll get off the crutch of the internet, start thinking for ourselves again. It can happen if we'll just do it. Form and structure do not hamper creativity, they help creativity. That's why a poet may make the choice of writing a poem in iambic pentameter or some rhyme scheme or some meter structure or a villanelle or a haiku or some other, like a sonnet or something. They make that choice because the rules of that form channel their creativity in new, fresh, surprising ways. And the poet who couldn't sit down to write some of the most beautiful lines in free verse finds himself writing things he never could have imagined because of a form, because of a structure. Even the Holy Spirit knows that. Why is Psalm 119 the longest chapter in the Bible? Because it's an acrostic, written 8 lines per letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The Spirit chose for the writer of Psalm 119 to write an acrostic because of the beautiful language that came from the process of form and structure. So boundaries assist creativity. They don't hamper creativity. We need structure in order to be free to create. Even God saw the need to frame His creative powers within the confines of the 24-hour time period. There was evening and there was morning the first day. Does that sound familiar? 6 days He did it, and on the seventh day He rested. What's good enough for God is good enough for me. The Creator is an example of how boundaries assist creativity. They don't hamper it. Life becomes more interesting. That's number 3. You know, a lot of people saw this technology developing. With every app that came out, with every social media platform that arose, they thought, how exciting, how fresh, how new, only to discover that they're still bored. In fact, maybe more bored than they ever were before. We talked about that a little bit in the first part of the lesson. It can be very frustrating to have so much at your fingertips. I subscribe to iTunes, and I can literally listen to any song that was ever recorded. Anything that I can think of, anything I get an impulse to listen to, I can search for it, find it, play it. It's amazing, right? But it can be really frustrating sometimes on a road trip when I spend the first hour of the road trip trying to decide what to listen to. And then you start playing it and you're thinking, well, you know, this is good, but maybe there'd be something out there that's better than this. And you can't keep track of what you listened to. You don't know what it was. You listened through it one time. There's too much out there. It's too much. Do you remember the days, a lot of you say no, do you remember the days when you had a sleeve of maybe a dozen CDs in your car? And that's all you had. And you were happy to have that. And you'd listen to them over and over and over again and get familiar with it and be able to sing the songs by heart, and they become a part of your soul. Those days are over. Because there are too many choices. There are too many choices. The lack of boundaries has hampered our enjoyment of life. When I first came to Ashville Road 20 years ago, man, I'm sounding so old in this lesson. I was making trips with my dad to Russia. And again, another old man statement, this was before the internet was really out. I mean, it was a dial-up internet. So I couldn't stream television, couldn't watch stuff on my phone or stream music. And we stayed in a little flat in Russia in Syktyvkar for 3 weeks. And we had a lot of time with one another. And I love my dad and he loves me. But sometimes we want to do something besides stare at one another. So what do we have? There was a television set in there and a VCR, and someone had left about 24 John Wayne movies. And that's all the entertainment we had available to us in that room. Now, before this, I was not a John Wayne fan. But you know what? In Russia, on a long weekend with nothing to do, when nobody spoke English outside that room, and the only company I had was my dad, I became a John Wayne fan. I looked forward to John Wayne movies. I watched a lot of them, and I enjoyed them because it was what I had. And so the limits actually made life more enjoyable. Well, does that mean we can't ever get back to enjoying things? No. But you have to set boundaries. You have to set limits. You have to say, I'm going to enjoy this one thing. Now, I've been using examples about movies and music and videotapes and that kind of thing, but let's get down to what really matters, okay? How about I'm going to take my mother out for lunch, and I'm going to leave my phone in my purse or in my pocket, and I'm going to turn the ringer off, and I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to give her all my time. Or how about I'm going to worship, and I'm turning my phone off. No, I'm going to leave it at home, and I'm going to come in to worship with my brothers and sisters in Christ. And I'm not going to allow a phone to ring. This would be a perfect time for somebody's phone to go off. I'm not going to allow a ringing phone or some thought about what I might need to message to somebody or some social media post I want to check on to distract me from the best moment of the week, the high point of the week. Now that's really what we need to be enjoying, each other and our God. And it's so much better than what the virtual world can offer us. Last, we become more productive. More productive. We talked about how distractions stop our productivity, cause us to miss opportunities, and all of that needs to be said. But I'm talking about something deeper than just getting things done. That's important, but there's something deeper than that when I talk about productivity. I'm talking about what happens to us when we have unrestrained freedom. Now there's this illusion out there, this myth, that there's such a thing as absolute freedom. There's no such thing as absolute freedom. Paul says, we are slaves of the one we obey. Romans chapter 6, verse 16. You are somebody or something's slave. You had better be sure that your master is someone who wants what's good for you, who's leading you in the right path. You're either the slave, Paul says, of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness. Who's your master? Whom are you serving? We'd better think about that. And think about it very, very carefully. Restrictions in life actually channel us towards becoming more than we were before, if you find the right restrictions. What did Jesus mean when He told the Pharisees, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free? John chapter 8, verse 32. Truth has a liberating influence. And somebody says, wait, no, truth confines. Truth keeps me from going over here or going over there. Truth is a boundary. You're right. But as one author puts it, truth is a liberating restriction that helps you become the person you were created to be. And you need boundaries for that. And you need to allow God to set those boundaries. Now, it's great to get more things done, to be more productive at work, to get more done with your family and get those projects done at home. But what's deeper than that is becoming the person God created you to be. Being productive spiritually in terms of the flourishing life Jesus died so that we could have. John chapter 10, verse 10. We've got to get control of technology before it controls us. Peter said in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 19, whatever overcomes a person, to that he is enslaved. What overcomes you? You know, I would imagine there's a lot of people out there saying, I've got a flip phone. I don't care anything about this. But all of us, whether we struggle with technology or something else, need to ask, whom are we serving? What overcomes my time? What overcomes my money? What overcomes my energies? Is it God, or have I made an idol out of something lower, earthly, something bad for me? Whatever your love is, whatever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Where's your heart tonight? Is it with God, the one who will, yes, restrict you, but channel you in the direction you must go to meet your fullest potential? Do you need some help meeting that potential tonight, setting those boundaries? We're here to help you and assist you. We're going to sing an invitation song, and if we can help you in any way, we ask you to come right now as we stand and as we sing.